Over 400 people dead, children executed in their homes, a militia sustained entirely by weapons, gold money, and cargo planes from a country that calls itself a peacemaker. And now the war in the Middle East may have accidentally disrupted the supply chain, keeping that genocide alive. This story has been happening for a couple years now. Most of the world has no idea. By the time this episode is over, you're going to understand exactly who's behind the genocide in Sudan, or who is presumed to be behind it, how the money and weapons flow, who is on each side, and what Iran war has changed. All of it so let's go. Now, Sudan is the largest humanitarian crisis on earth right now, larger than Gaza, larger than Ukraine, and most people are scrolling their phones today have no idea. Here's a 90-second history before we go into details, okay? Sudan has been through decades of military rule and conflict, but what's happening right now started April 15th of 2023 when two military factions that were supposed to be governing together turned on each other overnight. On one side, the SAF, this is the Sudanese Armed Forces, the official national military. On the other side, RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, a paramilitary militia. So the RSF was built directly from the Janjaweed militia, the same armed group responsible for the Darfur Genocide in the early 2000s, which the United States labeled genocide at that time. Sudan's then President Omar al-Bashir formed the RSF from the Janjaweed to counter other insurgencies, allowing it to siege gold mines and other assets, and even deployed it to Yemen as part of the Gulf Coalition, which is where RSF leader Hamdati built direct relationship with leaders in Abu Dhabi and Riyadh. So, same fighters, new name, same targets. On April 15th of 2023, long-standing tensions between Sudan's Army Chief General Al-Burhan and RSF leader Mohammed Hamdan Daglo, known as Hamdati, pronouncing it correctly, but Hamdati, erupted into a full-scale war. The conflict was primarily triggered by disagreements over integrating the RSF into the regular military and regular army, and a key step in the Sudan's planned transition towards a civilized rule. And the people caught in the middle, you guessed it, civilians, specifically non-Arab communities in Darfur region, the Masalits, the Four, the Zaghawa, the same communities targeted 20 years ago. So here's your first question I want you to sit with. If the world already watched a genocide in Darfur once, why is it happening again in the same place to the same people? And I'm saying genocide because we know that language has a legal weight and it has been formally confirmed. The United States government officially determined the RSF and allied militias committing genocide in Sudan. The UN independent fact-checking mission using satellite imagery from Yale University's Humanitarian Research Lab concluded that the RSF committed genocide against non-Arab indigenous ethnic groups during the siege of Al-Fashir, which was going on very, very severely. All eyes on Al-Fashir, if you haven't heard of it. Now, the UN's top relief official confirmed mass rape, mutilations, and murder on a widespread scale carried out without impunity. Researchers at Yale documented evidence of mass killing in hospitals, schools, and villages. Videos have been taken by civilians, and journalists documented civilians' massacres and extreme acts of violence by RSF soldiers against non-combatants. Now, the former U.S. envoy for Sudan estimated as many as 400,000 have been killed since the conflict began. Over 13 million have been displaced, making it the world's largest displacement crisis. Over 40% of Sudan's entire population is facing right now severe food insecurity and risk of famine. And now on December 4th, 2024, the RSF attacked a kindergarten and hospitals in a triple drone strike in Kalogi, South Kordofan, killing more than 114 people. The Sudan Doctor Network said that these were deliberate suicide drone attacks on civilians and vital infrastructures, a grave violation of international humanitarian law. Imagine Kindergarten, drone strike, 114 people dead. Okay, total right now, and it could be more than this. Okay, 400,000, and almost no one is talking about it. And if there are, it's very, very on a low scale. Now, you want to ask yourself, why is this genocide receiving a fraction of the global attention of other conflict? What does the silence tell us about whose lives the world considers worth covering? Now, who's funding and arming the RSF, following the weapons and the gold? Because the RSF could not have sustained this genocide without outside help. That's just not impossible. And the outside help, from what we know right now, is the United Arab Emirates. Since the war began, UN experts and other official sources have cited credible allegations of large transfers of weapon and military supplies from the UAE to the RSF group through two of Sudan's neighbors, Libya and Chad. At least 86 UAE cargo flights have been attacked, landing at Amjaras airstrip in Chad, about 50 kilometers from the Sudan border. Now, the lead analyst on Sudan Conflict Observatory reviewed the flight data and said logistics wins wars, and the UAE has used this plane network to consistently facilitate weapons to RSF. UAE supplied weapons to RSF have altered the balance of power in Sudan's conflict, prolonged the war, and increased civilian casualties. Now, after Sudan's military recaptured the strategic city of Wad Madani from RSF in January of this year, videos and photos surfaced showing a warehouse full of Emirati ammunition and missiles. Sudanese soldiers walked around the warehouse saying the weapons originated from UAE. Middle East Eye reached out to UAE embassy to comment. They did not respond. So it's not just weapons, it is gold. Gold has been a key driver to this entire war. The UAE received nearly all of the gold smuggled from RSF-controlled areas in Sudan. The UAE is essentially like a hub for laundering trafficked Sudanese gold into the global market. The UAE backs the RSF in part to prevent Islamic groups that underpin the Sudanese military from gaining power, a pattern the UAE has pursued across the region since the Arab Spring in 2011. Analysts also point to the UAE's strategic and economic ambition across the Horn of Africa as a driving motivation. So the UAE's consistent response to all of this evidence, they deny it, obviously. And they say that they are focused on the humanitarian aid and ceasefire efforts. God knows the truth, right? They have said this for 2 years while the evidence keeps mounting. Sudan took the case to the International Court of Justice, formally accusing the UAE of complicity in genocide. The ICJ ultimately said it didn't have any jurisdictions due to UAE exemption from specific article of genocide conventions, leaving Sudan with fewer legal avenues to pursue justice. This has been reported in NPR. So a country sued another country, the world's highest court, for helping to fund a genocide, and the court said it could not rule it. It could not rule on it. And that's not justice, that's a technicality. So here's another question for you. If UN experts, the United States Department, satellite imagery, flight data, and physical weapons warehouse all point to the same conclusion, why is the UAE still considered a trusted US ally and a global peacemaker in that sense, right? Who else is involved? The UAE is the biggest player from what we're seeing right now. But this conflict has become a proxy battlefield. And let me break it down for you in a plain English or something that we lay people can understand. The RSF side, UAE weapons, money, drones, cargo flights, diplomatic cover, Russia Wagner's group, now rebranded as Africa Corp, supplied surface to air missiles to RSF. Libya warlord Khalifa Haftar provided airfields and supply routes. And according to Middle East Eye, a UAE-linked cargo called Maximus Air, majority owned by Abu Dhabi's investment fund chair by the UAE National Security Advisor, has been tracked on dozens of flights linked to RSF supply chain. So on the SAF side, the Sudanese official military, Egypt has been providing aerial support, fighter jetters, and military intelligence. Iran supplied drones, specifically the Mohajar 6 and Ababil models, that contributed to SAF's victories over the RSF's fighters. Turkey and Qatar backed the SAF diplomatically and financially. Saudi Arabia, initially a neutral mediator, has increased shift towards backing the SAF. This is reported in Al Jazeera. So both Iran and Russia provided drone support to opposing sides in exchange for strategic interests, right? Iran reportedly hopes to secure the Red Sea naval base. Russia switched from supporting RSF via Wagner Group to supporting the SAF in exchange for reinstating a 2017 agreement for Russian naval base at Port Sudan. So Sudan sits on an enormous gold reserve, right? And it has the Red Sea coastline. It controls key trade corridors between Africa, the Middle East, or Asia, right? Every outside actor backing a side in this war has an economic or a strategic interest in who ends up controlling Sudan. So this is not just about the Sudanese people. It's about gold. It's about ports. It's about the Red Sea. And ordinary Sudanese civilians are dying for someone else's geopolitical chess game, right? Because the question is circulating this. Now, there is something that's been circulating this week. Is has the Iran war changed anything for Sudan? And I want to be honest with you, as I am with everything that I post on here. Here is what is verified, and here's what is not verified. What is verified so far is that Dr. Suleiman Badlo, a Sudanese researcher, told Aini Network, an independent Sudanese journalism outlet, that Iran war could hamper arms supplies and logistic for both sides in the Sudanese conflict. Iran supplies the Sudanese army with weapons. The UAE backs the RSF supply. Both supply chains run through same region now are being disrupted by the war. This is reported in PBS, okay? And then the Global Initiative Against Transitional Organized Crime, an independent Geneva-based research organization, documented that in 2025, even before this war between Iran, US, and Israel, the number of UAE cargo flights into the eastern Chad used to supply the RSF had already begun to decrease, right? Supply routes shifted northward to Quftra in eastern Libya, or directly into RSF territory under cover of darkness. And then the Middle East Eye reported in 2026 of January that the key UAE supply chain base at Al Qufra in Libya announced a temporary closure with parentheses or what is that, quotation marks, right? The closure ostensibly for runway repairs on a runway that was renovated as recently as February as 2024. So the closure is believed to be a cover while Libya Haftar decides whether to continue supporting UAE RSF supply chain under pressure from Saudi Arabia and Egypt to stop. Al Jazeera most recent analysis published about 4 days ago, it noted that as the Gulf states respond to the unprecedented security threat from Iran, their intention is unlikely to be fully trained on Sudan. Yet the same crisis could also create an opening faced with a shared security threat. Saudi Arabia and UAE may find a reason to set aside some of their differences, including over Sudan, and revive stalled peace diplomacy. However, Dr. Badlow warned that he does not expect the Iran war to reduce UAE support for the RSF. He believes that Emirati backing could even intensify as the UAE pursues broader strategic interests across the Horn of Africa. He also noted that fuel supplies reaching RSF-controlled areas currently move through East Africa via South Sudan, which is largely unaffected by the Iranian strikes on the Gulf. So the bottom line here is that the RSF supply chain was already under pressure before this war has begun, from the Egyptian bombing of the RSF convoys, Saudi's pressure on Libya's Haftar, and shifting flight routes. The Iran war has added disruption to UAE logistics and shifted the Gulf attention away from Sudan on right now. But the specific claim that the genocide has measurably slowed as a direct result of the Iranian strikes has not been confirmed by any primary neutral resources. What we can say with confidence is that the web keeping this genocide alive is more under pressure right now than any point in the last 2 years. Whether the pressure translates into fewer weapons reaching RSF and fewer Sudanese civilians dying is something we will continue to monitor. And when it's confirmed, inshallah ta'ala, I will report it. So as of right now, 1,400 people that we know of confirmed dead, 13 million displaced, the world's largest humanitarian crisis with almost no airtime, and the militia built from bones of the last Darfur genocide sustained by cargo flights, gold money, and diplomatic cover from a country that calls itself a peacemaker. And right now, in the middle of a regional war nobody asked for, the supply chains that keep the militia alive are under pressure for the first time in years, you can say. Sudanese people deserve for their story to be told accurately, without spin, without sides, just the truth. Share this video with someone you might know that needs to hear this. And as always, I leave you in the care of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Fi amanillah.